2019 Mac Admins Conference. This is starting from scratch with Munki. If you're in the wrong room, you can run out now. I won't give you any dirty looks. My name's Rick. I am the IT director at Merge. We are an integrated advertising and marketing agency in Boston, Chicago, and Atlanta. About 300 people, and our IT team is myself and 3 other people. We handle anything that plugs into the wall, and one of the ways we do that is with Munki. So that's what I'm here to share with you today. You can find me on the Mac Admins Slack at Refreshing Apathy. I chose that handle when I was like 13 and haven't thought of another one yet, sorry. And I'm on GitHub at Heil. If you are a follow along with the slides kind of person, you can download a PDF on my blog there, rickheil.com/PSU2019. I know some people like to follow along instead, and I just realized that my view is wrong here, so give me one sec to switch this out. Sorry about that. Turn off mirroring. That way I can get my notes. Hey, much better. All right, so before we start, quick show of hands. This is the only interactive portion, I promise. How many people have touched Munki before in some shape or form? Okay, more than I thought. Okay, so how many of you use Munki in production or day-to-day, here and there kind of stuff? Okay, how many people tried to pick up Munki once and said, maybe not? Okay, so true story, 5 years ago I started at Merge and I was that person and I was like, maybe not. And then the budget came out and I thought, well, maybe a free tool would do pretty well. What we'll cover this morning, so this is a lot of little stuff. The aim today is to prepare you with 2 things, terminology and tools. There are a ton of different walkthroughs all around the internet, on the Munki wiki, everywhere that tell you, run this command to set this up, run that command to set this up. What there isn't all the time is a good way to tell you what all of these different Munki-specific things mean and how they interact with each other. So there's going to be a little less demo today and a little more theory, but I think that will prepare you to apply that theory to whatever challenge you decide to tackle with Munki when you go home next week. So we'll cover servers and repos, we'll cover the client and how it works, we'll cover catalogs and manifests, we'll cover how Munki knows what to install and when to install it, which I think that was the thing that took me the longest to learn, so if I can give you a jump start, then I'll have succeeded. And then we'll go through a couple practical examples and talk about some add-on tools if we have time at the end. If we have time, we'll do some Q&A on camera. I'm just going to the next room for the next session, so feel free to grab me in the break area or afterwards. I'll hang out. If you have some more in-depth questions or just want to say hi, just come grab me. But first, there are a gajillion different management tools, so I want to try to get on an apples-to-apples level comparison here. So I want to talk a little bit about what Munki is and what it isn't, just so we have a good level set for people who haven't touched Munki before, and this is really your first experience with it. So what Munki isn't, it is not an MDM. Munki can install configuration profiles, not the ones that are gated behind device enrollment program or user-approved MDM, because it uses the profiles command line tool, so it can install just your standard configuration profiles. But that's not MDM, so it's not a replacement for MDM. You'll still need something on the side if you want to push out, kernel extension whitelist or a privacy preferences profile. It's also not a remote control or remote access tool. So it doesn't give you a remote desktop, it doesn't give you a remote keyboard and mouse, it doesn't take screenshots for you. I know a lot of remote management tools are built into some other configuration managers, not Munki. Reporting software. There are reporting softwares that tack onto Munki, but they don't come out of the box. Again, Munki is a very focused, singular purpose tool. And it's actually not that hard once you get to know it. There is definitely a learning curve, but I feel like once you're just a little bit pedaling up the hill, you can pull it off. So what is Munki? It is a managed software installation tool suite for macOS. It specializes and excels in managing what software is installed where, at which version, at which time, and when. It's versatile, it's powerful, and it makes complex configurations repeatable and really, really easy. It's also well documented. The Munki wiki is incredible, and it's community driven. Greg, who's the primary maintainer and coder in the project, is here. He did a big workshop on packaging yesterday. I think he's presenting another session today too. There are Slack channels, there's mailing lists, there's all sorts of documentation, there's archives. If someone's had a problem, it's probably on the internet for you to read and learn from and maybe fix your own problem too. So let's jump in. We'll take the easiest part first, which is what is a Munki server? It's a web server. That's it. It's literally just a web server. There's no software to install, there's no application you have to run, there's no code to compile. It's just a plain, flat, normal old web server. You put your text files and packages and software installers, aka your repository, onto any web server, and you point your clients to it. And you can use really any web server, I'm not kidding. You can use Windows, you can use Linux, you can use Mac OS server app if you have a spare mini sitting around you want to repurpose for this. There are more complex setups that involve using Docker images and cloud storage and all that stuff, and that's fun if you're interested. Come find me some other time, I could talk your ear off about that. But it's a little beyond what we're doing today. I think the big takeaway here is that with Munki, all of the logic is done on the client side. So when you're looking to troubleshoot something, you're not going to be looking for server logs. You don't need to log into the server and check something for the most part. If your web server is still serving the files, what you're going to be looking for is going to be on the client itself. So I said the word repo, short for software repository. A repo is a store of text files, which are plists, and packages and all those other items that Munki will be installing or interacting with. Repo is also one of those words that if you say it too many times, it stops being a word. When I was typing out these notes the last couple nights, it's just like, am I spelling that right? So the repo is stored on the server. And this is your standard layout. It's very simple, just 5 folders. Each one does exactly what it says on the tin. Catalogs, icons, and manifests go in their folders. Packages go into their folders there. And then packages info is kind of the metadata. This is the standard layout. It can be tweaked and changed. I recommend you don't unless there's a really good performance reason or architecture reason that you need to do that. Having things be the default is probably going to help you in most cases. And these terms will make a lot more sense once we get going. A quick word on security before we wrap the server-based section. Yes, we're already done with the Munki server. It really is that simple. I think it's good to mention security in reference to the files that are on that server. Think about the kinds of things you're putting into configuration management. Some of it might be pretty boring and plain, like, installers that you might just download from the rest of the internet, so web browsers or Microsoft Office, things that really aren't that secret. But you might also have things that you don't really want to get out in the world, say serial numbers, Wi-Fi passwords, or admin creators, or things like that. Those things you want to have secured somehow. You should absolutely have some sort of security on your repository. Generally, it comes in 2 forms. One is setting up an HTTPS certificate on the web server that you're using, so that way the encryption between the communication between your clients and your server is encrypted. And the second is using basic authentication, which is just a simple username and password that you can put into the Munki configuration. This means that if someone happens to stumble across your Munki server, whether it's internal or facing out to the world, they're not going to be able to just paw through whatever stuff you have sitting there. Again, this is covered on the wiki very thoroughly, so I'm not going to go into it here, but it's something to think about when you're designing and thinking about this. You really should have something that prevents people from poking around too much. So now that we've covered the server, let's cover what a Munki client is. So a Munki client is really any Mac that has the Munki applications installed and running. That's pretty much it. At its most basic, client is made up of 3 main parts. There's a lot of various libraries and helper tools and extra scripts and stuff like that, but the 3 parts we'll talk about today are the Managed Software Center, which is a GUI application the users are going to be able to interact with and get notified by, Managed Software Update, which is a command line tool, and the launch job. So that's the launch agents and daemons that kind of sit in the background and do some helper things. So let's dive into each one of these briefly, and we'll kind of talk about what each piece does in relation to the other ones. The first one is managed software update. Like everything else, it's located in the default Munki install directory, which, oh, that's my phone going off, which is /user/local/Munki. Again, you can change it, but it kind of gets tough if you do, so I recommend the default. Managed software update is a Python tool that takes inputs and marshals all your tasks into a full Munki run. So it's kind of the traffic director of everything behind the scenes. A fundamental concept here is that last bullet. Munki runs as root. So if you're logged into your Mac, you're running as your user. If Munki's installed, it's running in the background as a different user. This is good and bad. I'm going to air quote bad because it's really not that bad. Good because it means the user who is on the computer can interact with Munki, and Munki can do things without them having to authenticate. So if you are in an environment with no local admin users, cool, it doesn't matter. Munki can still get things done without the user's credentials. The bad, quote unquote, part is really on us, the Munki admins on the other side. We have to be more careful about packages and scripts because they run as the root user. So if I am installing something that expects to be installed by a user, double-clicking and running through the package, I'm looking at you, Zoom. There's some extra glue you might need to put in there to make things work. Again, this is something that's very well documented. There's some great literally copy and paste snippets for you to find out, well, okay, I want to put something in the user folder. How do I do that? You can run a script that enumerates all your users or gives you the currently logged in users. It's the one complication, I think, to packaging that's unique to Munki. And you'll also find it in some other configuration managers. Jamf has the same thing. It doesn't run as that local user. So when you're packaging up scripts, when you're importing new software, keep in mind that just because you've tested the installer by running it manually on your Mac, it might not necessarily behave in the same way. The best way to see whether or not it's going to do what you expect it is to import it into Munki, put it on a test machine, and see what it does. You can call managed software update manually in the terminal if you want. This is also what fires off quickly for a user because you've just made a change. Maybe you're looking for some debug logs or something like that. The first one is --auto. This is what runs about every hour in the background. So this is going to check for new software from the server, install any pending software if it can, without talking to the user. So if the user's got an update available for, we'll pick on Zoom again, then it will just download that update. If Zoom's not running, it'll install the update and the user doesn't even need to think about it. If the application is running, then that's where, or you've set conditions in a particular way, that's where it would pop up the managed software application and say, hey, you've got an update to do, and let the user know that there's something for them to do. --check only checks for updates. So it really just does the first part of that. So this can be useful when you're debugging why something isn't downloading. So if you expect software to be on a machine and it's not, check only will be a good way to not have to sit through the full, okay, check, download, install, post-flight, all that stuff. The third one is --install only. Here be dragons. There are no safety nets on this one. So all of those special checks it does to try to not like crash the user's applications and stuff, not with --install only. That is like YOLO mode. So be careful with it. Not something I recommend talking to your users about or anyone who doesn't kind of know what Munki is as much. But if you're doing some troubleshooting or you just need to like install a bunch of packages real quick, install only can be a great way to do that. We use that a lot when we're transitioning people from one computer to another. We'll just run install only because there's nothing running on the computer, so there's no danger of us, crashing someone in the middle of their favorite PowerPoint presentation. Along with all of these managed software update commands, you also have the ability to get verbose logs. So run by default, it'll give you, just a little bit of output, enough that you kind of know where it is in the process and what it's doing. You can tack on -v to get a little more. 2 V's get a little more than that. 3 Vs to get a little more than that, 4 Vs if you're starting to get crazy, and 5 Vs if you want to know literally everything. 5 Vs is essentially, it will tell you all of the ridiculous debug information as it's doing it. Again, really, really helpful, and you can tack those Vs onto either any of those 3 that we just talked about, the install only, the check, and the auto, and it'll just go through everything. This can also be really useful when you're trying to figure out why Munki doesn't think something is installing, because it'll tell you, I'm downloading this, I'm looking at these conditions, I've decided that this is true or this is false, and therefore I'm going to do X. So it's a very, very useful piece of information to have. Munki is really good at doing exactly what you tell it to, which is good and bad. It's good because it's powerful, it's bad because we're human, and sometimes we mess up. So verbose mode is a good shortcut to figuring out where you might have messed up. The Managed Software Center, so this is part 2 of the client. This is what the users will see. So when you say, oh yeah, Munki to a user, they're going to look at you like you have 3 heads. But if you say, oh, the Managed Software Center, they'll say, oh, is that black icon that pops up and reminds me I have updates every day? Let's take a quick walkthrough of what our Managed Software Center looks like. I will quit out of this and go here. Ooh, I have an update. Rude. All right, so this is the Managed Software. Oh, that's not the Managed Software Center. This is the Managed Software Center. Hey, as you can see, we've done a little bit of branding and customization because we're a marketing agency. We have to put our logo on everything. In here in the middle, we have optional items. So this works just like an app store. If you've used Jamf, this will probably look somewhat familiar from self-service, right? Users can choose what they're installing and removing. So if I decide that brackets is no longer my favorite text editor, I can click remove and it'll remove it. If I decide that I want to get myself organized, so I want to install Merlin, which is a project management tool, I can click install. So you can set up users to have different software in here, and this is all things you've pre-evaluated and that you control. So that in that way, this is kind of like your own internal app store. And users, for the most part, love this, especially software that isn't just free download from the internet, because they don't have to ask you for it, they don't have to put in a ticket, and anything that avoids tickets is great. In the middle tab here, in the categories, these are user defined, so we've just defined a couple of categories here for our demo, but you can call them whatever you want. You can do it by name, you can do it by department, you can do it by what color the icon is, all up to you. My items works kind of like the purchases section in the App Store. So this is going to show the user everything they've chosen to install as optional. It doesn't show them what you, the admin, have forced them to install because they don't generally have the choice to remove that. Ooh, I've got a bunch of updates. Fun. And then this is the Updates tab. So this is what it looks like when users have updates to do. It'll list them, it'll give them a short description of what it is, and it gives them a nice pretty icon and a version number. I see I have some drivers to update. Fun. So that's the Managed Software Center. Pretty straightforward, and users tend to love that. Oh, actually, one thing I do want to mention, which I find really helpful, is when you have users who are remote, in the window menu or with Command L, there's the log. So if you are not next to a user to look at the output of that super verbose stuff, you can actually ask the user to press Command L, and it will give you the fully verbose log from the last Munki run, which is, as you can see, quite a bit, but that's a good thing. So you have a way for users to self-serve. That's Command L. Yeah?
Is there a way to customize what is shown in the...
Yeah, the question is there a way to customize what's shown? So some of Munki is customizable. The headers, footers, and sidebar are all customizable. It's just straight HTML and JavaScript. So if you're good with those or someone in your company is, cool. As far as categories, those are all defined by you. You can change the name of it. It's a little more advanced, a little beyond our scope, but there is a script that lets you do all that. Good question. All right, let's get back into things. John.
How does it work with standard user accounts?
How does it work with standard user accounts is the question. So Munki, because of the next thing we're going to talk about, good segue, doesn't need the user's credentials or information to run at all because it uses LaunchD. So there is a launch agent that runs as the user that kind of serves as the glue between that managed software GUI and the backend stuff, which is all but run by a launch daemon, which is going to run as root. So that's the part that's going to actually do the actual install. So when a user hits the install button, they're not actually installing the software as themselves. They're laying down a little file that Munki picks up and says, oh, the user wants to install Chrome. The launch daemon then fires off and says, okay, I've got a job to do. What do I need to do? It looks at the list. Chrome needs to be installed. Cool, I'll pick that up and run with it. So in that way, you've got a separation of privileges there so that the user doesn't have to leverage credentials to do anything. The launch daemons are going to handle the schedule, and they're going to do restarts, logouts, installs, that kind of stuff. And the launch agents are just going to be kind of the glue between what the user sees and what Munki's doing in the background. I'll take a quick look. If you've never looked at a launch D item plist, this is what it looks like just with all the header stuff trimmed off because it didn't fit in the slide. Essentially, all that this is doing is calling user local Munki supervisor, which is just a wrapper script. You can see that there's a text line there, might be hard from the back. It's called delay random. It's set to 3600. So what this tells us is that every 10 minutes, because it's starting on the 10th minute of the hour, the supervisor kicks off and says, all right, I'm going to launch a Munki run sometime between now and 3,600 seconds from now, which if you're low on coffee is anywhere from 1 second to 1 hour. So Munki will run about once an hour. Now, why doesn't it just kick off at 5 minutes past the hour, 10 minutes past the hour? Say it's a heavy day for updates. You've got Adobe updates for Photoshop and Illustrator. You've got Microsoft Office. Well, that could be 10 or 12 gigabytes per computer. Not a big deal if you've got 20 or 30 machines. If you've got 10,000, your web server might have a bad day. So this helps to load balance things out. You can update this, so if you are in a situation, say a computer lab, where you have a defined maintenance window from midnight to 2 a.m. every day, you can edit this launch daemon and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to run only starting at midnight. And all your labs will update only at midnight. That way people don't get prompted during the day. There's a lot of flexibility here, and it just follows the standard Apple launch daemon configuration stuff, which is all on the web. So you're probably saying, how do I actually install this to my clients? So you download it from GitHub. It's github.com/Munki/Munki. There's a little releases button. You can download the package, install it to your machines, and reboot them. And there's no step 3. That's it. Just install it, and it is good to go. Configuring, however, is a different thing. So as I said at the beginning, Munki is not an MDM. So the easiest way to configure Munki is going to be with a configuration profile, which you can push out through your MDM. There are 2 main keys to set. If you don't have an MDM, you can also just use defaults right. Still works, no problem. It's just going to be a little more messy to manage if you need to make changes in the future. So there's 2 important keys to set. One is software repo URL. So that one tells your Munki clients, hey, this is where the software is. This is where everything is. Go here to get your stuff. Because otherwise, it's just going to sit there and say, well, I'd like to do things, but you didn't tell me where to go. Kind of like a lost person at their first conference who forgot to bring their schedule book. You just kind of stand there looking around, a little confused. The second one is client identifier. We'll cover this a little later. This tells the machine which software payloads to grab from the server. This is what's going to be turned into their manifest. So we'll cover that in a little bit. There's some other cool keys that I'll mention briefly. I was talking about basic authentication, so putting some security on your web server. That's the additional HTTP headers, so you can just copy and paste an encoded version there. Install Apple software updates. You can have Munki remind users to install their Apple software updates, not just your own, and you don't have to import them. It's just a wrapper around the software update command line tools, and it'll bug them for whatever Apple would have bugged them in the App Store or in newer versions and system preferences. Logging level, you can set the default logging level to be quiet or really loud. 1 is quiet, higher means louder. And days between notifications. This is a big one that we experimented with. This says how often does the Managed Software Center pop up and tell users, you've got an update, you've got an update. The default is 1 day, so it'll pop up once a day. If you want more, you can set it to more often. If you want less, you can set it to less often. And there's another key that it will let you turn that off entirely. Again, if you're talking about like a lab situation, you don't ever want it to pop up, you can do that too. question there.
Yeah, other than exaggerating, I guess, the Apple notifications, is there a way to suppress the Apple notifications, particularly for like Mac OS?
The question was if is there a way to exaggerate and or suppress the notifications? Exaggerate, yes. We'll talk about that in a bit. There's a force install key. Suppress, also yes. If you don't set that install Apple software updates, Munki won't do it by default. So that's an opt-in for you as the admin to choose. So we've talked about the client, we've talked about the server. Let's talk about the stuff that goes on the server. And this is the real meat and potatoes of the thing. The first big half are packages and package info files. We'll spend about 30 seconds on packages because it's pretty straightforward. Then we'll spend a lot of time on package infos because these are really where Munki makes its worth. So the packages are just the installers, the disk images, the files, the whatever you're getting from a vendor or from whoever's providing you your software that you're importing. So, sometimes you'll be able to straight up just import them. If you have a DMG that you download and you just drag and drop to applications from there, Munki knows how to process that. You don't have to mess with it. If you have a well-formed standard Apple installer package, .pkg or M package, you can just import it into Munki. Munki knows what to do with that. Some applications, Zoom, Adobe things, they have special installers or the installers that are actually like an app instead of like a normal installer package. Those might take some custom packaging, a little more messing around. There's a couple of presentations. There was one yesterday that Greg did on packaging that was really good. And there's a couple from last year and the year before that I recommend if you haven't done that kind of work before. It can be a little tedious at first, but it's very interesting, at least to me, but I'm a nerd. So that's packages. You're not really going to play with that much unless your package needs to. So you don't have to do that necessarily. Package info files, however, you are going to need one for every package that you want. So let's talk about those. They're p-lists because p-lists are easy, they're structured, and Macs know how to talk p-list by default. So it's a good, sensible default. They're essentially, think of them like metadata. So you've got your package over here, and then you've got your instruction sheet for Munki on what to do. So this tells it how to download it, how to test whether or not it's installed already, how to configure it, any pre-flight or post-flight scripts it needs to run, how big the package is so it doesn't accidentally run the user out of disk space, all that good stuff. So we're going to go through some package info keys. And again, if you haven't worked with p-lists that much, XML defines things in key and value. So the key is like the label, and the value is the data that you care about. So each one of these keys is a label, and then you or some of the Munki tools we'll go over in a few minutes will fill in this information so that Munki knows what to do. So the first one is version. You need to know what version your software is. It's pretty straightforward. So that's, version 1.0, version 6.38b, that kind of stuff. Name versus display name. This one is good for us as IT people. It lets you specify a different name internally versus externally. I know I'm not supposed to swear, but we'll talk about printers. All of our printers internally, we use host names because IT has, 3 dozen printers to take care of, and the printer by project management means nothing to someone who's not in that office, right? So we use host names internally, so something like PR9. Well, I know that that's the black and white reco that's in the back corner of the Atlanta office by project management and user support. That really doesn't fit so well with a user's implementation of that because they don't care what PR9 is. They care it's the printer that's next to Geo and I think Stephanie's sitting there now. That's what they care about. They care about where it physically is. So what name lets us do is set an internal name. So that's where IT will see, all right, that's PR9. Display name is what will show up in the Managed Software Center. So that way when people are installing a driver or trying to find it in that optional list, they can say, okay, I need the color printer, it's the Ricoh. Oh, there it is, because it's labeled the way they expect it. So this can also be nice for tools that you need to rebrand for some reason. So if you're pushing out a tool that's, a remote desktop client, a remote desktop or control thing, you might label it as IT support tool because that's what your help desk calls it. So this lets you kind of play with names a little bit so that people who are on the other side of Munki know what to expect. Catalogs we'll dive into a lot more later, but a good start to know now is that package infos end up being compiled into catalogs. And I'll give you a good analogy, and that key is helpfully called catalogs. Unattended install and uninstall is another one. We touched on this briefly, but not by name, actually. This tells Munki whether or not it should process the install in the background if it can. So this is the don't bug the user mode. Be kind to your users. Don't bother them with every update if you don't have to. So there's plenty of application suites. Microsoft Office is a good one. People keep Outlook open all day, but they might not keep Word, Excel, and PowerPoint open all day. Well, let's see. Can we push a couple of updates while those apps are closed and then only notify them for one? The little workflow things like that. Unattended uninstall works the same way. Is there a IT tool or something more behind the scenes that the user can have removed and they don't really need to see that it's removed or click, yes, I'm ready for this to be removed? You can set unattended uninstall to be true, and it'll allow Munki to do that by itself. Description. This is that little blurb that you saw next to the icon and the name. So again, user-facing, can be as verbose or as short as you want. This supports HTML, so if you've got like a bunch of internal apps and you want to put in links to things or a knowledge base page or embed images that are hosted on a web server somewhere or something like that, you can do that in a description. Pre-install and post-install script works just like a package, so you can tell Munki, okay, so when you download this and you're getting ready to install, run this script, then install it, and then run this other script after. And you don't have to specify them, but they're there if you need them. Can be helpful on times where you're doing like a big version upgrade. So you need to remove an old configuration file or copy something into a different location and then run the installer, or vice versa, do it after the installer. Update for and requires are the magical part of Munki to me. Update for lets you set a piece of software to force Munki to say this is an update for something else. So if you import Google Chrome version 71 and then you import Google Chrome version 72, Munki knows as long as things are named the same, that's the name value, not the display name, it'll automatically figure out, okay, this is an update. It'll say, oh, well, Google Chrome 71 is installed, so therefore I can install Google Chrome 72. We're good to go. So you don't have to manually mark those. Where this can be helpful is serializing things. So that Merlin application that I downloaded, that's actually one we use update for. So Merlin is just the application, and then there's a little script that their support provided with us to say, run this script with this serial number, and it'll serialize the application. Well, I don't want to have to copy and paste that script into every single package info every time I update a new version of Merlin. So what you can do is say, our serializer is an update for Merlin. So that way, Munki will always make sure when Merlin gets installed, the serial number installer gets placed right next to it. This is the same thing. You can do this with Microsoft Office if you're on the volume license train instead of the Office 365 train. Super helpful because then you don't have to go back and remember to edit every single time there's an update, every month or two. You don't have to remember to edit in serial numbers and things like that. Requires works on the other side of things. You can say, all right, I have this great Photoshop plugin. It lets me copy and paste people's heads onto other people's heads. It's a lot of fun. The memes love it. So, I want that plugin. Well, the user presses install, and if they don't have Photoshop, well, it's not going to do anything. We can use requires to tell Munki, hey, if you're installing package A, you need to have package B installed already. And so requires works the opposite way in order as well. So it's going to always install the things that are marked as requiring first. So there's like the prerequisites, and then it'll install the second piece. Force install after date is one that I mentioned to the question about Apple updates earlier. You do have the ability to do carrot and stick with Munki. The carrot is just that Managed Software Center pop-up, and the stick is force install after date. You can set a date and time. It'll just evaluate in the user's local time to say, you must do this update by such and such date and time. This can be handy if you have a security or compliance team who has metrics that they want you to meet on when you're patching things. And it is a little abrupt. Users will continuously get pop-ups about once an hour, and then they'll get a 45-minute warning, a 30-minute warning, a 15-minute warning, and then they're forced logged out, the update happens, and then they can log back in. Don't use this with major version OS updates. Pro tip. I may or may not have bricked a couple testing computers that way, but it works great for things like browsers, even for point updates, going from 10.14.4 to 10.14.5, that kind of thing. So again, if you have a security and compliance metric that you need to meet, this can be a good little nudge along the path for people to make sure that they have things updated, especially for applications that never get closed, things like Outlook, things like web browsers, that kind of stuff. And the two most special keys, and these, again, are the heart of Munki, are receipts and installs. Many times, if you are browsing through the Munki Slack channel on MacAdmin Slack or looking at the mailing lists or stuff like that, you'll see a lot of people saying, hey, I got it working, and Munki installs something, but then an hour later, it wants to install the same thing again. Like, why is it doing that? Here's your answer. Installs and receipts. Installs and receipts are how you tell Munki, hey, this is how to know if something's installed. We'll cover it with Munki import in a little bit, but Munki is pretty intelligent and will define this for like 95% of the software out there for you. You won't have to do this by hand most of the time. Some apps, also looking at Adobe and printer drivers, are a little more difficult and require you to be a little more careful on things. So receipts just work off the package util database. So anytime you install an Apple package, there is a database of all the packages you've ever installed on that Mac and the files that they've installed. So Munki knows about that, and it'll look at the apps, the packages you're importing, and figure out what those receipts are, and it'll automatically know, okay, I need to look for those receipts to see whether or not it's installed. And if the developer has done their job right, the version numbers should match, the files should match, all that stuff, no work for you, you're good to go. You can check that manually if you run pkgutil -- package-info and the package ID, which is usually like a reverse website thing, so com.apple.safari or something like that. That'll tell you what receipts things are leaving. So that's another way to double check your work if you've got that looping over and over install. All packages leave receipts. Not all receipts are useful because not every developer understands the package environment. Receipts is one way to do it, but it doesn't really work if what you're installing isn't a package. If it's like a drag and drop application from a disk image or something like that, there's no receipt because there's no package. So installs array is the way that you can define it for that. And this tells Munki to look at a specific file or bundle-based thing. And there's a couple different ways to do it. Most of it's the CF bundle short version string. If you ever right-click on an application and you see the contents, and then there's like resources and macOS and a bunch of different stuff, there's a file in there called info.plist, and that's going to give a bundle ID and a version string and a developer string and a copyright string and all these different little things, and that's what Finder is usually reading when it's giving you that quick look preview to tell you all the information about it. It's looking at that info.plist. So Munki can do that too. And Munki can also look at a file checksum, so it can look at an MD5 hash, so you can say if the hash is this value, then it's version 3. If it's this value, it's version 3.1, that kind of stuff. And it can even just look for, does the file exist? Yes. All right, it's installed. We use that last one a lot for Photoshop plugins because a lot of them don't have good info plist. So it's just like if the folder or the file exists, cool, we're just going to consider it installed and have a day. You have two options to make a package info. One is make package info, which just kind of spits it out in the terminal. It's a little advanced. There's a ton of options you can use with the -h flag. That'll give you the full readout. I don't really use that one as much. I use Munki import because Munki import does all the work for us. It is easy as pie. Come on. You can do it, Slide. I believe in you. I should have gone for the 16 gig model. Uh-oh. All right. Oops. Let's try that again. Sorry about that. Come back. All righty. Munki import. Let me take away my force quit. So the first time you set up Munki import, you'll need to run a configure command. After that, you just run Munki import with the path to the item. And it's funny that it crashed when it did because this is demo time. Figures. So let's do a quick demo. Let's drag this over here. And we'll make it nice and big for everyone in the back to be able to see it. Somewhat visible back there? Good? All right, cool. So it's Munki import dash dash configure. This is going to prompt you with a couple of different questions. The first one it's going to ask is your repo URL. Now, we're going to use a local thing on our Mac because it's easy for the purposes of this. This is great for testing, or if you're setting this up on a server and you're going to kind of administrate things from the server. You can also set this up on an AFP share, an SMB share, an NFS share, however you want to do it, so that way you don't have to log into the server to make changes here. For now, we're going to use the file repo, which is file, 2 slashes, and then whatever the path is. So mine's users, rick.heil, desktop, demo, Munki repo. Package info extension, you don't actually, this is just the file extension of the package infos it creates. You don't actually have to have anything there. It's a plist. I like using plist because then it opens up in my default text editor. If I need to double click and look at it, it does like the quick look preview, that kind of stuff. Package info editor, use your favorite text editing app. That can be Brackets, Atom, VS Code, BB Edit, Text Wrangler, whatever you like. The one to avoid is TextEdit, the built-in one. Why? Because it uses typographer's quotes, the curly ones. You don't want that. All of your scripts will completely fail, and you'll ask, and as soon as you paste it onto Slack to ask or send an email to ask, you'll go, oh, you know what? I bet it's those quotes. Sure enough, it will be. So another thing to watch out for in your text editor, make sure you're set to use just the regular old straight up and down quotes and not the pretty curly ones. So we'll set it to BB Edit because that's my favorite one. Default catalog to use, we'll talk about catalogs a little more. I use testing, so we have a testing group who we break everything, and then we have a production group who we try not to break everything. Sometimes it works. And then the repo access plugin, by default, it's just going to go to file repo. That's probably what you want if you're doing it on a local machine. Again, this is something you can look up if you want to change that. And that's it. That's all the configuration you need to do for Munki import. So let's do a little Munki import demo. We will do Munki import, and I have one passwords installer package sitting right here. So we're going to do a Munki import, and then one password. And it's going to chug away, and it'll prompt us. And this is interactive. So this is filling out all those package info keys we were just talking about. So there's your item name. That's going to be kind of the back-end name. There's your display name. So one password, password manager. So that's what the users are going to see in Managed Software Center. Description, keeps your passwords safe. Yay, security. Version, you see Munki has pulled the proper version because Agile bits are great and they know how to make packages, 7.3.1. Category, this is an admin defined thing, so I'm going to call this a security tool. Developer is Agile bits. Unattended install, do we want this to install without prompting the user? My answer to that is true because I want it to always be the latest version without them having to necessarily click. Unattended install, uninstall. Now, if we need to remove it, I probably want the user to know that we're going to remove it so they're not looking for it. So I'm going to leave that as false so it'll prompt them when they need to uninstall. And then our catalogs. Again, we're just going to do this for the test group, so that's testing. Do I want to import this item? Yes. Upload to subdirectory path. You can choose where it goes. We'll talk about organization in a minute. Do you want to create a product icon? I told you, this does everything for you. Yeah, you know what? Let's create an icon. Why not? Edit package info, sure. So this will pop up BB edit. I'll drag that over and I'll show you what it did. So all of those ridiculously complex keys, oop, that's a little too big. You can see it has auto-filled all of them. So there's some metadata at the top. We've got our catalog, we've got our security tool category. It's filled out the item hash, it's got the path, it's got the receipts. So it's gone through and realized, hey, these are the receipts that this application is going to leave. And it's got our version. So that's it. Munki import will just run for you. You can use Munki import with a variety of things. You can use it with a standard macOS package, like we just did. You can use it for the drag and drop copy from DMG, and you can actually use it for things that don't necessarily go in the applications folder too, which is super handy. So if you're installing plugins for a browser or for Photoshop or some other application, you can tell Munki import how to use that. You can import configuration profiles. You can Munki import with the path there. Then there's some special stuff, which we'll talk about one of them and ignore the rest in the interest of time. No package is a way to just run a script. You don't need a package installer, so you don't need to package up every single little line of bash you want for your clients. You can just put it in a no package and it'll run it just as everything else. On demand lets your users click an install button for like a one-time shot. That can be useful. We use it for clearing font caches. So every time the user clicks install, it just goes. There's some specific Adobe types because Adobe is special. There's macOS update metadata, which lets you set those force install dates and a couple other things. And there's Start OS install. You can actually use Munki to upgrade major releases, like from High Sierra to Mojave, for instance. We're going to talk about a couple of these real quick. macOS packages and copy from DMG. Just use Munki import, just like we just did. Again, with the packages, watch for pre- and post-install scripts in packages that expect to be run as the user. Sudo in a pre-install or post-install is like a big waving red flag saying you need to look into this a little more. If you've never picked apart a package, there's a tool called Suspicious Package. It's really good for this stuff. It's a super easy to use graphic tool, and it'll show you these are the files and where they're going to go. These are the scripts it's going to run. It'll let you preview everything. It'll also let you extract pieces in and out if you want to see what the package is doing. That way you don't have to mess around with the command line, expand and flatten stuff, which can be kind of confusing. Config profiles. Munki will do any non-user approved MDM or DEP gated preference. So that's everything except for kernel extensions, whitelists, and TCC and that kind of stuff. You can create it by hand if you're a masochist. You can use Profile Creator, which is my favorite new Mac admin app. It's the Profile Creator channel on Mac Admin Slack. It's a GUI that lets you create profiles. It's got a bunch of pre-made manifests for a bunch of different popular apps. So it's just, oh, I want this preference set. Check a box, select a drop down, that kind of stuff. So super, super helpful app, and it's open source, so it's free. Profile Manager, if you want to create them in the Profile Manager and the server app and download them and import them to Munki that way, you can do that. Again, highly recommend Munki import to do this. Use the pkginfo version key. If you're editing profiles by hand and you've never done that, there's a profile version key in there. Don't do that. It'll break, promise you. So just use the pkginfo to tell Munki what version of it is. No package, which makes my life better, and it can make yours better too. It uses an install check script to see whether it needs to be installed. So it's a script replacement for an installs array, essentially. And it says, evaluate these conditions. If it's true, it's already installed. If it's false, it's not installed. You can read a little more about that on the wiki. It's a little more advanced, but this is a way that you can use printers. We use a script that sets up the printer queues and makes sure that people have the right duplex settings and the default to black and white, which everyone hates except for corporate who made that policy, so I just enforce it. This uses post-install script to run whatever script you need. So essentially you have two scripts for a no package. You've got one that says, do I need to run? So is the thing set already? And then you've got one that sets the thing. So Munki will run the install check to see whether or not it needs to go, and then it'll run post-install if it does need to. Make pkginfo, which is the more complex one, is a little better for this because it's a little quicker than trying to manually put it together. Munki import by itself won't know what to do with just a plain old script, but make pkginfo will. A quick word about repo organization. I showed you a little bit that you can specify where things are. Pick an organization scheme when you're starting. Write it down, put it in a text file in the root so that when someone else starts working with you on this Munki repo, they know what you're doing, and then use it because things get out of hand real quick. So here's a screenshot of our Munki repo. There's a lot in there. 300 users and 3 offices. Gets a little hectic sometimes, especially because we're about 75% Mac. So we have people doing much more than a standard creative workflow. Our entire accounting department's on Mac. So all of their special ERP plugins and stuff are in here. So the way we've chosen to do it is we have a folder for apps that are user-facing, a folder for internal stuff, a folder just for Munki because it's special. Templates are just like stationery and letterhead stuff. But then inside of each one of those apps, we sort it by the developer and then the app itself. So for this one, you can see we've got packages, apps, bare bones software, BB edit, and then all the way at the side, we've got the DMGs that have the version of the app that we're installing. Pick something that works for you. You can organize this any way you want. Munki doesn't care. As long as you're telling it in Munki import where things are, it's going to be happy. So pick something that makes it easy for you to go through and see what versions you're using. So let's go up the chain one now. From packages and package infos, we're going to talk about manifests and catalogs. Ooh, one too many. Yes.
Do you use the same repo for both your production and your development?
Great question. I use the same repo for production and development? Yes. And that's great segue. We're going to talk about that. So you can have multiple sections with manifests and catalogs. The analogy that I was taught on, and I think is brilliant, is that manifests are like a shopping list and a catalog is like a grocery store. The catalog is just like this overwhelming, massive list of stuff because it's every package info in that catalog all in one huge file. I mean, they're massive. So if you just say, oh yeah, install something, you're going to be scrolling through there forever. A manifest tells you, no, install this particular thing. So when you're going to the store, it's not just, okay, get some food, and you come home and realize you forgot everything that mattered, but you got all the snacks. It'll tell you, no, get milk, get eggs, get bread, get bananas. This is Munki. So let's dig into this a little more. Catalogs, when you call the make catalogs command, runs through all of your package info files and looks for that catalogs key. And whatever you've set that key to be, it'll look for that one. So it'll first go through and say, okay, I'm going to get all the ones that say production. Put them all together into the production catalog and put it in the catalogs folder. I'm going to run through and find all the ones that say testing. Put them all together, put it in a file called testing in the catalogs folder. So in that way, you can tell your clients in the manifest section next, go shopping at these specific grocery stores, and you can have different stuff at those stores. So if you want clients to pick up stuff from testing first, you list testing first. If you want to pick up from production, you list production. Create as many catalogs as makes sense for your environment. I recommend separate test and production. Again, break the small amount of people, not everyone. Clients only read the catalogs. They don't actually touch the package info files. Package info files are for us. The clients are just looking for the catalogs because that way they only have to download one file instead of potentially hundreds, right? If you're not seeing a change, you probably forgot to run make catalogs. Cool catalog tricks. Munki clients evaluate catalogs in the order that they're placed in the manifest. So when you're specifying those catalog keys, if you put testing first, it'll look through the testing catalog first to look for things. And if it doesn't find it, then it will go into the production catalog. So this is how you can do a test group. So let's say new Google Chrome comes out. We want to make sure it's not totally broken. We add it to the testing catalog first, and anyone who is assigned to the testing catalog will download that newest version instead of the current production version. There we go. You can also separate multiple companies using the same repo, kind of on an MSP model this way. So if you've got one company who, only wants to do updates quarterly, and you've got one company that wants to have updates done yesterday, you can accommodate those kinds of things without having to have super separate repos. Tom Bridge has done some really interesting work with multi-tenant Munki, so find him if you have questions about that. Manifests are plist files. Should sound familiar. Everything in Munki is a plist, right? They instruct clients or groups of clients to do what with which software and which catalogs to use. So this is where you've gone from a giant assemblage of packages and metadata to a catalog, which kind of sorts them into the grocery store. And now you've got the shopping list for that individual machine, which is the manifest. Clients get manifests based on the file name on the web server. So you can do this a couple different ways, and we'll cover that in a second. In a manifest, you have 4 main sections. Managed installs, which says you are going to install this. End of discussion. It just goes. This is useful for required software. If you're used to baking an image, this is the stuff that would go in every single golden master, right? This is your tools that are everywhere. Managed uninstalls is the mirror of that. So that is the stuff that you don't want anywhere on your machines. That's useful for saying, hey, we've been using this product, the license is expired, we're moving to product B, remove all of product A. That's a managed uninstall. Again, the user doesn't have a choice. You can use the unattended flags to say, tell them about it or don't tell them about it, but they still have to remove it at some point or another. We used managed uninstalls to uninstall Office 2011 when we went to Office 2016. So there's another practical example for you.
That's good for also, you're trying to do version control on something, and the user goes out and grabs a new version, that'll actually uninstall the newer version and will reinstall the older version if you have that set correctly.
So the question is about using it for version control. So could a user upgrade software themselves, and will Munki rewind? Yes, you can set it to do that. It's not the default behavior. If something newer is installed than what's in your repo, Munki won't mess with it unless you tell it with managed uninstall to mess with it. So that takes a little more logic, and it's trying to make sure it's not stomping over a user who's doing something different, right? The first rule of Munki is do no harm in a lot of cases. Manage updates is section 3. This is kind of useful for people who have admin rights. It'll maintain a set of software and update it only if it's been installed first. So if you prefer everyone use Firefox, but you really want Google Chrome to stay updated, managed updates is your jam. This is going to keep things pushed out, but it's not going to force them to install it. It'll just update it if it finds it on the Mac. So this can reduce clutter, and it can also reduce the amount of applications you're downloading. So if you're doing a lot of provisioning at once, this will shorten up your provisioning time. Optional installs is the fourth group. This is that big long list of software on the first page. So this is letting the users self-serve things. So you can set that on a manifest and say, yes, you're allowed to install this. No, you're not allowed to install that. And again, comparable to the App Store or Jamf's self-service. This can be really, really big. We saw a huge reduction in help desk calls. We have a couple business units that don't have admin rights, and the number of help desk calls for basic software install tasks dropped like a rock as soon as we started teaching people about the optional install stuff. Because we don't have to schedule a ticket and do remote or walk up to the desk, log in, authenticate, install the software, log out, make sure that it's installed right. We can just say, oh yeah, so open up the Managed Software Center and click the install button. Any questions? All right, cool. Have a good day. Super, super easy. Question here.
Put in like a nag screen with any of this?
Can you put in a nag screen was the question. So that's that install force by date, which is going to pop up and give them the due date, however often you've set that to pop up. Included manifest is the last part. It allows you to nest manifests together so you can kind of stack them. So you can say, all right, if I have a specific group of software, say it's everything for our production team. I'll put that all in one manifest, and then when someone comes onto the team, I can add that manifest to their main one, and we're good to go. So there's some flexibility, which we'll talk about here, on how you can design these. Munki by default, when it fires off, just tries to load your software repo URL /manifests/the manifest name. So if you've set that client identifier, that's the manifest name. That can be any number and letter string that you want. And it's just going to reach out and say, hey, Munki server, I am client XYZ. What you got for me? And the server hopefully has a manifest there by that name, hands it back, and then Munki goes on and processes and does its thing. Well, what if client identifier is not set? There's 4 options here. The first is it'll ask the server for the fully qualified hostname. So that's rix-mac.local or .mycompany.com if you bind. The second is it'll do short hostname, so rix-mac. The third is it'll do the serial number of the machine. And the last, it'll always fall back to site_default. So if it hasn't been configured, it'll always go back to site default. That's like your emergency manifest. This is my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of super opinionated blog posts out there about manifests and how to design them and what's best and what's right and what's wrong. The long and short answer is that there's no one right or wrong answer. It's what works in your environment. For us, we do one manifest per machine, and we use serial number. So that way we don't have to worry about setting that client identifier key for every single Mac that we have under management. We just let the serial number take care of it, because hopefully every Mac has a serial number, or else something went wrong in the factory. And we then use group manifests. So let's say my serial number is 1. I'll have that, and then we'll say, all right, well, he's in IT, so he gets the IT department manifest included. So when Munki downloads my serial number, it says, okay, looks through, it looks for any optional installs, any forced installs, any managed uninstalls, all that stuff, and then it gets to the included manifests, and it runs through and does the same process for any included manifest. And you can stack them further, so you can include an include on an include if you really want to. So this lets you kind of group things logically and assign. So instead of having to add 30 things to every single serial number manifest, you can add one included manifest. So this is a good way to group software. Now at the same time, again, going back to like our lab environment, you might not have machines that are as special and unique as us. You might say, all right, I'm going to have one manifest for this lab, because this is lab 01, which is the video edit lab. So all these machines need to be identical. And when I make a change, I don't want to have to remember to change it a bunch of places. I'll just change it this one place. Whatever works for you. So this is where the design phase of Munki is so important, because this is going to let you figure out how you want to group things. Try to think a little bit towards the future, though. It can be a little tough to do department manifests, for example, because then someone comes in and says, oh, well, I just need this one little software piece. And then you have to think about, all right, I have to reconfigure, and I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have to separate them out. So do a little thinking about how you want to handle like one-off software requests, but especially for labs, the group manifest thing can be really good. You got a question?
Yeah, is there a command or update that needs to be run if you create a new manifest for a computer? Because we've run into issues where I'll create a new manifest for a lab environment and run
Sure.
catalogs and all that.
Yep.
And then, once I run manage updates on the computer, it's still pulling from.
Right, so the question is there a command to run for new manifests? So if you change the manifest for some reason. So on the server side, no. Because the server, remember, it's just a web server. There's no logic. As soon as you update that text file and save it, you're good to go. On the client, you may need to update. If you're using that client identifier preference, you may need to default's right to change that, update your configuration profile. CFprefs likes to cache things, so it might be stuck there. So that's again where that verbose output can help you, because it's going to tell you why it's getting that particular manifest as you go through things. So now that we know about manifests and catalogs and packages info, now we get to the goods, which is how does Munki know what to install? So whenever it's evaluating a software package, Munki's going to run through 5 things in order. It's going to say, is it on demand? So is it that one shot done? If yes, cool, we're just going to run it, YOLO. Number 2, is there an install check script? If so, sweet. It'll run the install check script, and that will decide, do I need to install, do I not need to install? Configuration profiles then are evaluated. They have their own special little software bits that I'm not going to get into because it's a little advanced for this session. Then it looks at installs items. That's that installs array we talked about, which can look at files, and then it looks at receipts. The important thing to know here is that if you are specifying an install check script, Munki will not look at installs or receipts. So it's one or the other for that. So let's talk about a background Munki run. So what happens when Munki gets fired off? So that first launch daemon is going to trigger the supervisor. It's going to randomize a delay. After that delay expires, supervisor says, all right, managed software update, you're up, let's go. So managed software update is going to reach out to the server. It's going to ask for its manifest, hopefully get it back. It's going to look through each item in that manifest in those 4 sections. It's going to create a list of any installs or uninstalls, and it's going to download anything it needs to do that, whether that's a script or a package or a disk image or whatever it needs to do. It's going to do any unattended installs, so software that gets installed in the background, or uninstalls, software that gets uninstalled in the background, and then it'll follow the notification logic for any updates that need to be attended to. So that's things where an application is open and the user's using it. That's things where you have said, I want the user to know you've left that false for the unattended bits. And then the user gets to ignore it for 3 to 5 weeks. So let's go through a quick practical example. We've talked through a lot of this in theory. So let's go through a practical problem that you could solve with Munki pretty easily, and one that we ran into pretty quickly. We have a lot of secure InfoSec requirements. So we have patching metrics. So we have to be able to say, these people are authorized for this software, these people are authorized for this software, never the twain shall meet. So our problem is that Firefox is the main supported browser. We also support Safari because we're nice people, and Apple makes a pretty good browser. So that needs to be, they both need to be installed by default. Well, Apple takes care of Safari. That's easy. Firefox we want installed. Anyone with Google Chrome, we're not going to tell you you can't use your favorite browser, but we still want to make sure we're meeting those patching updates, SLAs. So we're going to want that to get updates. And then our developers, God bless them, they want Chromium because Chromium does something cool, or there's a bug that they're trying to get fixed in it or something like that. But I don't really want, Joe from accounts to be using Chromium because it's probably a little over his head and they're developer builds and it's probably broken and he's probably going to blow up his computer. So how can we solve that before Munki? So Apple Remote Desktop, task servers, yeah, no. could ask people nicely. If your users and coworkers really love you, this might actually work. You can walk around to each machine. That's how I started. Put it all on a thumb drive, walk around to each machine, double click, okay, you're all set, see you next week. Wailing and gnashing of teeth is the short answer. This is a really difficult one, even just to set up once, much less enforce and keep going and be able to measure. Well, so how about with Munki? So import the software, add it all to the production catalog, make a manifest for your developers, make a manifest for everyone else, add the software. That's it. You're done. So importing, we're going to import Google Chrome.dmg and Firefox.dmg and Chromium.app because they distribute. It's just an app file. It's not wrapped in anything. When you import a .app file, Munki import will automatically throw it in a disk image for you, so it'll compress it and make sure it's good there. You'll specify your production catalog and make in Munki import or editing by hand. And don't forget to run make catalogs. Your manifests are going to look something like this. Again, this is, say, accounting and sales, who we want to have Firefox forced. We don't want them to have Chromium, and we want Chrome to get updated, but not force installed. So we're going to put the production catalog in there. We're going to say Firefox is a managed install, because that's going to force it. We're going to say Chromium is a managed uninstall, because we don't want that anywhere near their machines. And then we're going to do managed updates for Google Chrome. And optional installs, it's there. You don't have to put it there if it's blank. I've just put it there just for reference. So if you had Opera for some reason, you could put that in. Yeah. Developers, on the other hand, are going to look a little different. We want them to have both Firefox and Chromium, and we want to manage that. So we're going to put that under the managed install section. Uninstalls, well, we're not removing anything from their computer, so that's just empty. And then managed updates, if they decide to use Chrome, we'll update it for them. So there's some going further bits here that I want to touch on just to give you a little food for thought, and maybe you'll see a session that mentions some of these that you'll want to attend. I think the biggest going further after you're comfortable with the mechanics of how Munki works, you've got it set up for a few machines, you're reasonably confident in how you can do things. I think the next thing for you to learn is auto package. Right now, before auto package, you're just doing things manually. So you're relying on, blogs or, RSS feeds or emails from vendors and stuff to pick up new versions of your software. Well, what happens when you go on vacation? What happens if you're just really busy because some server broke somewhere and you really need to fix it? You don't have time to import the newest, browser updates or patch Adobe Reader or Flash Player yet again. Auto package can do that for you. Auto package is just a set of scripts that runs in the background and just checks for new software. It follows a recipe format that you can tell it to download anything. And it imports everything automatically into Munki. So we have it set up so that as soon as something's imported, it goes right into our testing catalog and fires off a help desk ticket for us to know about it. So that way, within a couple hours of something released, when auto package runs every 6 hours, it just pulls everything in, and we don't really have to do anything except watch that ticket for a day or two, make sure no one has problems, and then add it to the production catalog instead of just to testing. So it helps you keep on top of your updates, keep things secure. There is a GUI version. So for those of you who are a little more command line averse, it's auto packager, so it's just an R on the end of it. It's not maintained at the moment, but it still works fine. Tidying up, repo clean. This is a script written by Greg, who's the primary author of Munki, and it allows you to go through and automatically delete old versions of stuff. So you can say, all right, so I've got 17 gajillion versions of everything. I just want to keep the newest 2 or 3. So this script will go through, look at your catalogs, and say, all right, well, you don't need, Office 2008 or 2011 in here because you've got 2016. Probably okay with that. It can be helpful to spot cruft, clean things up, especially as your repo gets older, as you expand it to more clients, as you've got more and more software. It keeps the sizes down so that we are not running high on disk space. And that you can download directly from the Munki project if you just go to github.com/Munki/Munki. It's in the code client repo clean folder, or just use the little search bar and search repo clean. There's a couple more advanced tools here as well. I mentioned reporting at the beginning as something that Munki doesn't do out of the box. Well, Munki Report PHP does do that, and it's brilliant. It just hooks onto Munki. Every time Munki runs, it gathers a little information and pushes it up to a web application. It's pretty simple to use. I'm biased because I've written some code for it. And it's just displays everything on a web app. So again, if you're looking for compliance metrics or, gives you a searchable inventory of all the apps installed, it'll tell you whether users' firewalls are on. There's a module that'll tell you battery power for all their Bluetooth devices. So if you're one of those special people who has users you can trust with wireless mice and keyboards, you can actually have a dashboard that tells you whose batteries are running low. Super, super useful. You can get as detailed or as overview as you want. Putting your repo in Git or source control, any programmer friends out there who have used Git before, Munki works really well on that because you get to have a rewind button. But Git has a very steep learning curve sometimes, especially if you've never used it before. So that's another thing you can think about. Using cloud storage for your repo, let's say you're one of the companies who just uses software as a service. You really don't have an internal footprint. Well, you can use object storage from Google or S3 from Amazon, stuff like that, to host all your packages and your catalogs and your manifests and all that stuff. Why not? Continuous integration, this is a talk I gave 2 years ago. Everything we do is automated, and it's all done by robots. All done by robots. My goal is to replace my desk with a couch at some point, and continuous integration is how you do that. So what things can you automate? Well, all right, let's automatically import software. Cool, auto package, that's automated. Let's automatically promote things after a few days from testing to production. Let's run some tests and make sure that we didn't insert some extra characters or semicolons. Let's make sure that we have a lint script that runs when you make a change to make sure that if you've added something, it still meets requirements. Things like silly things like, does it have an icon? Does it have a description? Is there a change management ticket associated with it? That kind of stuff. Application usage, Munki has a section that lets you track what applications have been launched when. There's actually a demo on the Munki wiki where you can use Munki to automatically remove software that hasn't been launched in X amount of time, which is super, super cool. Again, licensing requirement-wise, if you're doing it by seat rather than active users, that can be a serious, serious help for your budget. And obviously, customizing the Managed Software Center look and feel. You can brand it however you want. You can change the name. You can change the icon. You can make it look pretty. You can use the blink and spin tags as much as you want. It's just HTML. And finally, getting help. As I mentioned earlier, Munki has an awesome community around it. It really is, Greg is a heck of a leader, and the community has really rallied around this tool. So before I close out, before we use the last couple minutes for Q&A, I want to let you know how you can find help if you're not sitting here at Mac Admins. For general help and how-to, there's the wiki. Hopefully we've gone through some of the terminology, so these wiki articles are a little less gibberish and jargon for you. github.com/Munki. Click on the Munki repo, click the wiki button. There's a couple hundred articles there that cover everything. There's also the Mac Admins Slack. If you're not on there, sign up on macadmins.org. It's free. There's a Munki channel. I think pretty much every single developer for Munki hangs out there that I know of. So you're likely to run into not only them, but also a lot of community members who know what they're talking about, are using Munki between 10 and 10,000 Macs. They really know what's up. And if you're old school, there's the Munki Discuss mailing list. It's a Google group, so you can sign up with email. If you are a coder, you want to contribute, you think you found a bug, the Mac Admin Slack is also a good place to talk about code, and you can also post a GitHub issue, which is just GitHub. That's all I have for you today. We have 2 official minutes of Q&A left, so we can probably do 1 or 2 questions if anyone has a question. And then afterwards, I'll stick around and we'll answer any more questions. So you, sir, I found your hand was up first.
Just very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty loud. We're managing over 1,000 student laptops.
Yep.
Grades 4 through 12. We have a lot of students who end up with not enough disk space.
Sure.
What happens when that's the case, when downloading anything? What type of errors, what type of reporting do you get?
Yeah, so what happens when there's no disk space? One of the keys in a package info says to Munki, this is how much space I need to install this item. So if there's not enough, Munki just won't download it. It'll throw an error. That's where reporting is important, because you can get that report saying, hey, Munki bailed out of these 3 packages because out of disk space. But that's also a potential usage for the application usage things, is to say, all right, well, how can we free up space automatically? Maybe with disk usage. All right, we've got time for one more quick question.
What server type do you recommend? Because I know.
Sure, yeah. What server type do we recommend? Yeah, because there's a million of them. Yeah.
Apple
Yeah.
servers.
Apple
gone.
server is kind of dead. So whatever you prefer, whatever you're comfortable with is the first recommendation. And my second recommendation is if you are in a bigger department, whatever your sysadmin team will support. I know a bunch of people who run it on Windows because with IIS, just because that's what their infrastructure team will hand them. And then they just have to worry about the content, not the server. Overall, I would say Linux is probably the most popular, so you're probably going to find the most documentation around that. Apple server, not as much. All right, we are out of time. Come on up if you have any questions. Thank you so much for coming today.